Look, all I'm gonna say is Morbius could have been entirely saved if this was the post-credit scene.
Fine. I'll do it myself.
Hey guys, thanks so much for clicking on this video. My name is Chris. I just got done watching the latest Sony Spider-Man spin-off universe movie, Morbius. And with Morbius, we follow Jared Leto playing Dr. Michael Morbius, a biochemist with a rare disease that affects his blood, spending his entire life trying to find a cure, eventually leading him down the path to experiment with bats, granting him abilities at a major cost. And that's all pretty much there. Without giving any spoilers to you guys, this will be a spoiler-free review. Be sure you return on the channel once the movie's officially released, because I have so much I want to rant off about with spoilers. But getting into it here, I was never a big fan of the whole idea that Sony feels the need to make this whole spin-off universe revolving around Spider-Man characters. I know people don't like it when I say it, but I wasn't a big fan of the first Venom movie. I think it's okay, it is entertaining and rewatchable in some aspects, but it really wasn't what I was expecting out of the universe, and I didn't really find it necessary. And then Venom Let There Be Carnage came out, and I've decided to just kind of embrace the silly, goofy fact that comes with these Venom movies, and I enjoyed it a little bit more, especially just seeing Carnage and Venom finally face off, something I always wanted to see. But then they announced something like Morbius, the living vampire, another Spider-Man villain, getting his own movie, and I was like, I don't think I'm interested. But then we have the first trailer come out and our minds are kind of blown. We see Spider-Man in the background behind Jared Leto's Morbius, connections to a larger universe, some very confusing, and even putting those connections aside, I didn't think the power set that Morbius had looked all that bad. I was kind of interested to see what would go down. But if you've been following the movie lately, it's just nothing but a steep downward slope for this film, and now having seen it, Sony, what are you doing? And I do want to make it clear, I'm putting aside the whole Spider-Man connections and I'm trying to look at Morbius as just a film on its own, and even then, it doesn't help the film out at all. This was a movie that was supposed to come out 2 years ago, and in the span of those 2 years, major changes have happened to the Sony universe, mainly the big success that was Spider-Man No Way Home, and the results of that movie have affected Morbius to where Sony has done a lot of meddling, and you can very much feel it when you're watching the movie. The film runs about an hour and 45 minutes, and it actually breezes by pretty quick. Some people are actually going to feel like this movie is an hour long. But I feel even to the most casual of fans, when they're watching the movie, they're going to be jarred about how fastly paced this movie is and how weirdly they cut from scene to scene. I myself definitely felt like there were a lot of scenes missing in this movie to where I wouldn't be surprised if Morbius was originally supposed to be a close to 2-hour movie. In watching this movie, it felt like Sony was just trying to rush through the origin and explanation to who Jared Leto Morbius is so they can get to that post-credits scene or ending of this movie to set up whatever they have planned for this universe. And it's that rush and pacing of the movie that kind of gives it this sort of made-for-TV feel. And I don't mean that in the sense that the film feels cheap, because you know what? I'm actually going to disagree with a lot of critics out there and say, I think the visuals of Morbius look pretty good. That's one of the positives I'll mention about this movie. I liked a lot of the visuals in Morbius, the fight scenes that he has, the way he uses his powers, and the way they were integrated on screen. I honestly didn't think it looked bad. Just because you know something was done with CGI and you're looking at CGI doesn't make it bad CGI. I thought it looked pretty good and intriguing. What I mean by the made-for-TV feel is, I don't know if anyone's ever had this feeling, but when you're watching like a Twilight Zone episode, or maybe like a Black Mirror episode to be more modern, you're watching this and you're like, man, this could be an entire movie. Sure, it's only like a 40-minute episode, but you feel like they could stretch this out to an entire film. And I'm looking at Morbius the opposite way. This movie is so chopped up, fastly paced, rushing through the origin and villain story that it feels like something that's supposed to be a Twilight Zone or Black Mirror-like episode. I also feel like Morbius is another one of those villain turned solo movies that just suffers from the anti-hero syndrome. I'm perfectly fine with villains getting their own movies if you actually treat them like villains and the way they were brought up. And of course with Morbius, they don't want to do that at all. They treat him like an anti-hero who maybe does one bad thing here and there, but at the end of the day, he has a moral code and he wants to stick to it. And to be quite honest with you, that is just so boring for a character like Morbius, especially someone that's supposed to be this villain and eventually maybe fight off Spider-Man. I was watching Morbius going like, you know who should have actually have been Morbius in this Sony universe? Matt Smith. Matt Smith is by far the best part of the entire movie. The boy steals almost every scene he's in. His character is a childhood friend of Morbius, and they grew up together dreaming to maybe one day find a cure for their disease. And of course, when Morbius is able to find it, it causes a conflict between them when he doesn't want to share that with his friend. And then the things that transpire with Matt Smith's character, the boy is having a blast on screen. He actually makes the movie a lot of fun to watch, and I was thinking to myself, like, why couldn't he actually be Morbius? Why can't we have him be the lead character and just watch this guy do bad things from his perspective and actually make this a villain solo movie? He even has a way more compelling backstory to me than Morbius himself in this movie. It also doesn't help that the love relationship that happens in this film feels extremely forced without any payoff. I honestly just feel bad for actual fans of Morbius who were hoping to get a half-decent movie about the character, because there was like little moments in here where I was like, man, if you just kind of stuck to that tone, this could have been a cool film. Because I think the movie at times even doesn't know what it wants to be. It brings in these two cops, Tyrese Gibson and Al Madrigal, who kind of add this comedic factor to the movie, so they're trying to get you to laugh there. Then you have like the Morbius action scene, so it feels like an action movie. And then there's these other moments where they try to make it a horror movie. And you know what? When Morbius is trying to be a horror movie and create that type of atmosphere, it's actually interesting. And it feels like that should have been the direction of this movie this entire time. You should have made a rated R horror movie of Morbius. There's like sequences in here where Morbius is going ahead and slicing people and blood should be spewing out, and he's actually supposed to be drinking blood, but because we gotta keep things PG-13, nothing is coming out of these people. I actually chuckled at a scene where Morbius like slices someone's neck and the guy's going, and nothing is coming out. There's nothing happening. And you know that's just because of the rating they're trying to keep with this movie. And don't even get me started on a lot of the logistical issues going on in this film. There's a lot of stuff in here that just does not make sense. The film at times even contradicts its own set of rules and powers that they've set up for these characters. And again, I'm not gonna spoil it. Maybe some of you have already heard what the post-credit scenes are, but the actual scenes themselves have no context or reason for being part of this movie. And I'm not talking about them being connected to the larger Spider-Man universe or anything like that. No, like the actual scenes themselves and how they connect to Morbius do not make sense at all. There's no reason for them to be attached at the end of this movie. I'm gonna be shocked if Sony decides to continue on the path that they're setting up here with Morbius, if this guy even ever shows up again in this spin-off universe. And if they do, they have a lot of cleanup work on their hands to set this character back up and actually make people care about him. So for Morbius, I'm gonna give action 3 stars. Like I said, I do enjoy the visual effects in this movie. I didn't think they were bad at all. If anything, I found myself very entertained whenever he was fighting or showing off his power set. Comedy in the movie, I'm gonna give it 2 stars. A lot of that will just have to do with the 2 police officers in this movie investigating, but it just felt very out of tone with what the movie was trying to give you. Drama in the film, I'm gonna give it 2 stars. Like I said, it has the feel that this movie could have been 40 minutes long. There's not enough substance thrown in here, and I feel like people will only really relate to Matt Smith's character. Horror in the film, I'll give it 1 star. Maybe for really young people, they'll get scared. I know there's a couple of moments in here where they try to build up a horror-like scene, and I actually really like those moments. And suspense in the movie, I'm gonna give it 2 stars. I think people are not gonna care all that much about the characters on screen, who lives or dies by the end, and that's really just a testament to how they chose to build up these characters. Casual fans, I'm gonna give it a C+. Cinephiles, I'm gonna give it an F, and critically, I'm gonna give it an F. I was hoping Morbius would at least be worth watching or possibly even just renting it, but sadly no. After seeing the movie, Morbius is a movie you avoid.
No, please, please don't say that.
Again, those are just my opinions with the movie. Maybe some people out there will end up liking the film. If anything, I think the people who will like this movie are the people who maybe watch like 3 or 4 movies a year. I think this film is going to leave Spider-Man fans very frustrated and upset, even more Morbius fans. The sooner we can ignore and pretend this movie never happened, I think the better. Let me know what you guys thought of Morbius if you got around to seeing it. Be sure to stay tuned for the spoiler review because I have so much more I want to say. But until then, be sure to like, subscribe, follow me on Twitter at 3C Films or on TikTok at 3C Films. But as always, I'm Chris. Take care.